Hello, welcome to another exciting episode of Ask an Atheist. We are a weekly educational call-in program dedicated to atheism, skeptical inquiry, and the separation of church and state. We're coming to you live every Sunday afternoon at 3 to 4 Pacific time in Seattle, live from SCAN Studios. And we're also coming to you archived online at www.askanatheist.tv. I'm Mike Gillis, and with me again this week is Sam Mulvey.
Hello, hello.
How are you doing this week, Sam?
Pretty good, pretty good.
We have some announcements,
Bit
don't
of
we?
a long week, yeah, and ties right into how we open the show. We are, as we say, we're live from SCAN Studios in Seattle. SCAN stands for Seattle Community Access Network, I believe, and it's a cable access network funded by the government of Seattle, and partially by the government of Seattle. I think there's some donations going on there.
It comes out of the general fund.
It comes out of the general fund, which means every now and again, SCAN needs to renegotiate its contract with Seattle in order to get funding. And as you may or may not know, if you're in the Seattle area, the Seattle government is undergoing a pretty significant shortfall this year. And so they're rallying to get the money they require, and it's not much. It's less than 1/3, I believe, what the Seattle channel gets. It's actually, for the kind of programming you get on this network, it's a pretty minuscule budget.
Yeah.
And we've met a couple of, we're a little bit worried about it in many ways as Ask an Atheist, because we've met a fair number of producers at this point.
Yeah, we have every confidence, of course, in the staff here at SCAN. These people are consummate professionals.
Absolutely, absolutely. But
we have an interesting menagerie. It almost kind of looks like the Batman Rogues Gallery at times.
It does a bit. There
are some good shows on SCAN, to be fair.
There's many good shows.
A lot of the music shows are really good. There's also the High Bar with Warren, which is really good.
I kind of want to be on that show,
yeah,
to be honest with you.
Nightmare Fuel. There's some good stuff on here. I mean, not every program on SCAN is about how, Bigfoot is rigging the election, or how the Boy Scouts are behind the crop circles.
But that is kind of what people think about sometimes when they think about SCAN. And we're hoping that perhaps the community here in Seattle can reach out to the local government and to SCAN and see how they can help and see how they can keep this channel running and keep this channel well funded. So we're asking our viewers if they would be willing to do this, send in some letters, send in some emails. Emails are good. People also pay attention when you go through the effort of putting a stamp on something.
Absolutely.
So in the next few days on our website, we will have information on how to contact people at SCAN and in the government in Seattle, and to help us out. Now, our next...
actually, before that, if we can get the SCAN website up, and I know there's information on the SCAN website right now.
Oh, there is.
On how you can contact people. Remember that we're one of only 2 atheist access programs in the entire country, and cable access is really one of the only places that we can get on television. You're not going to see us on NBC, you're not going to see us on CNN, you're certainly not going to see us on Fox News. But I think that the fact that we are on cable access, if we lose this as a venue to have our word out there, we're going to lose our visibility in media, and all you're going to get is the 2 minutes that they give Richard Dawkins on, like, Anderson Cooper.
Yeah.
It's nice, but, when are we going to get a long-form way to explain ourselves? So, please go to SCANtv.org and find out.
Like I said the first time we got together, I was really unhappy with the way atheism was portrayed in the media, and this is one of the few places where we can actually take the time to make our arguments clearly and concisely, as here on cable access. So we were talking, one way is to let the people in the city government know that you want SCAN. Another way is to become involved in the SCAN process. And if you become involved and we show them that there's a big community effort out there and that people are wanting to be heard, that reaches the government. That reaches people who have been elected, and that's meaningful to them. Yeah. So please, go to the SCAN website, and we'll have the information on our own website, and help us keep SCAN floating and us with it.
Absolutely.
Now, the other side of this is that SCAN every year has a SCAN Award show?
The SCAN Awards.
The SCAN Awards. And, actually, do you want to table this and go to the call? Or
Let's do the call real quick.
Okay, yeah.
Robert from Huntsville, Alabama. How are you doing today? Robert, are you there?
Hello?
Hello.
Yes,
hey.
Robert. There you are.
Okay, yeah. Oh, thank you. I'm sorry about that, sirs.
No problem.
That's fine. What have you got for us today?
Well, I was just calling in. I am a Christian, first and foremost, but I was calling in. I sent you guys an email earlier in the week where I was stating something that I was talking to about a friend of mine, where we were discussing something specifically about the issue of homosexual marriage here in America. And the basic conversation went like this, where he asked me some questions, basically said, as a Christian, don't you believe it's sin? I said, well, yes, of course, I'm a Christian. Of course I do. Well, do you believe it's natural? I said, no, I don't believe it was the way it should be, but it is there, so no, it's not natural. And they said, so you don't believe in gay marriage? And I said, absolutely not. I do believe homosexuals should have the right to be married. And of course, people will tell me, well, that's a hypocritical position. And here's the thing is I have a problem with Christianity and today is because, yes, I may have a problem with it personally, but that problem comes from a religious basis that not everyone shares, period, end of story. And with America being a secular country, meaning our laws are not based upon any religious standpoint, that it should not be law. That marriage itself is not a Christian concept.
That's true.
That you don't.
Robert,
you don't have to be Christian. Sorry, I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
Robert, I want to congratulate you because more than a lot of Christians that I have talked to, you understand the separation of church and state. So I disagree with you ideologically, but I think it's actually great that you understand that there's a difference. Like, for instance, I'm not a religious person, obviously, but I'm not against the institution of marriage. And if I were to get married one day, religion would have no part to play in that. And I don't see anyone trying to ban me from getting married. But I guess one thing I want to ask you about something you said. You said that yes, it exists out there, but how is it that it's not natural? How is it not natural if it exists in nature?
Well, and that is what we come to is, for me, that not natural from a Christian standpoint is that I don't believe it was ever meant to be. But, and this, of course, comes from my personal, I will admit, mythology of my faith.
So natural is a euphemism for not defined in Scripture.
I'm sorry, sir, what?
So natural is a euphemism here, is a stand-in for defined in Scripture, is what you're saying.
Correct. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, I guess I do take some issue with that, where I'd say that you should probably use a different word rather than unnatural. I had the same issue with the word spiritual, where everyone's using a different definition for the same word, and you end up sort of crossing lines with somebody. I'd say that maybe you should say it's not, scripturally allowed, which I would agree that it is. I do disagree that it's unnatural because, one, you see it in the animal kingdom, and also, technically, we're still part of nature, so anything we do is technically natural. Like a chimpanzee even using a tool, like a stick to get termites, is natural.
There is sort of a fascination with the concept of natural in that we're religious people and even some non-religious people, especially when they start talking about things like veganism and stuff like that, where in order for us to be the best we can as human beings, we have to stick to some sort of natural existence. I'm talking to you over electromagnetic pulses sent over copper wires, converted to light pulses, sent over plastic and back into copper pulses. You're in Huntsville, Alabama. You likely heard of us through a huge distributed network of these sorts of things. This information network did not exist before we took natural resources and did something which most people decided was unnatural. I'm not really certain, and this may be just ignorance on my part, but I'm not certain why we're so focused as people on this concept of natural concepts and non-natural ones. And the delineation between natural and unnatural seems pretty, it moves around a lot.
Yeah, it seems to just match up with somebody's ideology. But I guess I would ask, Robert, do you sort of understand what I mean about how natural and scriptural can be totally different? I mean, a lot of the impulses that I see in the Bible are actually, they condemn what are essentially natural impulses. Oh,
and I totally do agree with you. And like I said, that's why I was saying I was talking to another Christian, because that was the context we're using it. Because you're bringing up a very good point, and this is something we got into later in that same discussion, where, and we can see it within the science realm, when someone says fact, you can't use that term in scientific context. All of it ends at theory. That sometimes we use one name and two people will talk about the same thing. That's when we're talking about natural. Because I do agree with you. It is when we're using it in the secular sense, when it's someone, non-Christian talk with someone else, you can't use that term because it means two totally different things. So I do totally agree with you that a big problem that we have is the definition of words. Because as anything, words, no matter what you use, always have a vast array of meaning that may not be agreed upon between two people speaking prior to being said.
We'll have a lot of agreement there. I feel a lot of the major arguments between atheists and theists, and even between atheists and between theists, is one of semantics and terminology. Is that words change over time. Words evolve. Words acquire new meanings. Sometimes people hijack the definitions of words. So it's hard. It's very hard to come to some sort of. It's hard to come to an agreement when your maps don't merge up, when you're not using the same definitions of words. And a lot of what I would like to do with this show is kind of give you an idea of what our definitions of words mean and if they match up, which is why I brought up that question about what you consider natural to be.
Right, and that's within the context of the conversation I was having with that particular person. That's why I was saying when he asked me that question. But if we were having that conversation differently, of course, when you say natural, you're talking within the natural world. Of course it happens. Anyone who says it doesn't, just like when they say traditional marriage, which I hate that term.
I do too.
I actually was on a different radio show, on a Christian one, which I got kicked off of when they said what's not traditional, and I point them out 50 different instances of marriage certificates between men and women, and even women throughout the world, long before there was even Christianity, even in the Christian church.
Yeah,
and of course they didn't want to do that.
And traditions change. I think it's worth mentioning that actually getting to choose your spouse is a pretty new thing. I mean, traditional marriage, if you want to look at the entire history of human civilization, has been largely arranged marriages. And actually that's the case still. If you want to just take per capita, that's really how it's done even now in the world, with the exception of much of the Western world. The same thing, marriage for a long time was within a religion, within a race, within a society. It just wasn't allowed to step outside of that. I mean, I remember that there was actually the first national poll where a majority of people actually approved of interracial marriage. That first poll happened in the 90s.
Yeah, that was quite some time. That everybody thinks that interracial marriage, it's a solved issue and everybody's for it, and it's not really in the media, but it wasn't that long ago that most people seemed to frown on it. Yeah. And if you want to go back even further, I'm in my 30s, I'm not married yet. Even if I get married to a woman, it's going to be a non-traditional marriage because I waited so long. These things change over time, and it makes sense to accommodate them. And if this is just another social evolution, we really and people are happy and they're acting on a moral basis.
And we're talking about consensual adults.
Yeah. Then I'm not exact. I really, it's one of my just basic failures to understand where the problem lies.
Yeah, especially when marriage between two people that you're never going to meet, whose lives are likely to never intersect with you. I assume that they don't travel in the same circles as you. I guess I really don't understand why people get so angry about somebody else's marriage. Your marriage isn't changed in any way. I know I'm not talking to you, Robert. I'm talking
I know.
Outwardly. I guess I just don't understand it. It doesn't make sense because a lot of the arguments I hear, instead of same-sex marriages, somehow their rights are taken away if they're not allowed to enforce their rights on other people. And then you have to ask, what about churches that do accept same-sex marriage? When you ban it, is their religious freedom not curbed by that same argument? I would say simply that you can't use that. Like you said, I know that we agree on this, that religion has no place in government to enforce its doctrines on other people.